What does it mean to be a man? It's a pretty heavy question, my friends, because in a world of fading toxic masculinity and honestly maybe even toxic humanity, this is an important question and discussion regardless of gender. We can all benefit from understanding the male spirit better and how that translates into quote-unquote being a man in an ever-evolving world. And we can all add to the conversation as well, because in one way or another, we are all, or we were impacted by toxic traits and expectations that were applied to men in the past. Traits and expectations that simply don't work anymore, that many people are trying to shake off in order to reinvent the concept of what it means to be a man. And this is today's narrative.
Welcome to the Human Narrative Podcast, where we share stories that resonate amongst us all.
Welcome back to the Human Narrative Podcast, my friends. I am your host, Clark, aka the Sober Webb, if you're listening in from my YouTube community, and I am an emotionally conscious, empathetic, spiritual, compassionate, and vulnerable male human being. Yep, that's me. I consider myself a very strong man, even though I'm not as quote-unquote manly as some male human beings out there. I can't grow a beard, but I do have a fierce mustache if you haven't seen my YouTube channel. I consider myself handy, but I can't necessarily fix or build things, but I do know how to find the solutions I need for any and all problems. I don't own a lot of tools. I don't work on my own car. I don't hunt. I don't own guns. I don't drink or smoke anymore. I'm not part of any fantasy football leagues. I don't wear a suit to work. I don't rub shoulders with manly millionaires. I don't care about climbing the corporate ladder. I don't yell, belittle, or fearmonger to command respect of others. I don't believe in the typical relationship hierarchy within a relationship, partnership, or marriage. And most importantly, I don't stuff my feelings way deep down. At least, I don't do that anymore. Now, this episode is not about me and the type of man that I am. So please keep listening, because the message I hope that everyone hears is at the very end of this. Well, it's throughout this episode, but like all other episodes, I always close each episode with what I really hope the lesson in all of this is. But I'm giving you an example of who I am as a man, or how I feel about myself as a man compared to maybe how I was raised or what other men have been told, because like I said in the opening, it's a very important discussion that I think a lot of men are struggling with understanding within themselves, within their marriages, within their partnerships, just within their role as a male human being in life. So anyway, I already gave you a bunch of things that I'm not technically as a quote-unquote man. And some people, regardless of gender, might use all of those things I listed to qualify what a man is, whether it's themselves or someone else. But, well, you know what? I know a lot of male human beings that are all of those things I mentioned earlier, yet they're miserable. And you might not know that they're miserable by looking at them, but they are. They might not even know that they're miserable, but they are, because they are blinded by what they've been told they have to do, how they have to act, how they have to feel in order to be a man, and ultimately that being a man means the ego runs the show. So let's talk about the ego for a second, because it's a really important concept that many people misunderstand. When I use the word quote-unquote ego, I don't mean confidence or how one feels about themselves. By ego, I mean the part of us, whether male or female, that thinks we have to prove that we're right, to prove that we are better than others, that we have to earn people's respect, that we have to make people like us. The ego's that part of us that latches onto addiction, regardless of what the physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual addiction might be, because said addiction makes us feel in control, even though ultimately that is the furthest from the truth when it comes to addiction. The ego is that part of us that binds ourselves to chaos because we think it makes us appear tough, resilient, or like we've paid our dues. Or more specifically, the ego keeps us constrained by a victim mentality because we want to prove to others how hard our life is or how much we've suffered, so that we can gain the attention and sympathy of others, or maybe even, sadly, control and manipulate them. It's all ego, my friends. It's all of that. But here's the secret about the ego. It's a mask for fear and insecurities. And I know Maybe there's some men out there that are shuddering right now because I just mentioned fear and insecurities. And God forbid, as a man in today's day and age, we have fear and insecurities and actually be vulnerable about that. And the problem is, instead of just admitting that we're afraid or we don't know how to do something or that we are wrong, we posture, we exude false bravado, we breathe false machismo, we fake it till we make it because we don't know how to operate without the ego running the show. And this applies to every human, regardless of gender. It's not just men. But since we're talking about, quote unquote, what it means to be a man, let's stick with the gender at hand. This next part might piss some people off who hear what I'm about to say, but stick with me because it will make sense even if you don't like what you hear at first. Men that let the ego run the show, all they are scared little boys stuck in a grown man's body. Their grown-up life is a facade for deep trauma that they've never healed. Their adult way of living is a mask for mother and father wounds that fester deep in their soul, and they are stuck in childish ways, even though they try to act like a version of a man that has never been and will never be a truly healthy form of a human being. But you can't blame them because they were never given the tools necessary to become aware of and how to heal all the emotional, mental, spiritual, and even genetic trauma, pain, and dysfunction that was passed on to them by their parents, or maybe things that they picked up in their life. And as I say all of this with nothing but love, compassion, and understanding and full accountability of myself, because I too used to be a scared little boy who tried to play the role of a quote unquote man for a very long time. And where did it get me? Well, for me in my journey, it all manifested in a 13-year battle with alcoholism from the age of 24 to 37. I had no idea how to operate as a healthy, emotionally aware human being, let alone a healthy man, in a world where my ego called the shots and where it used my guilt, my shame, my fear, and my trauma to control everything that I did. But then my mom passed away in November of 2014, a few months before I became a dad in March of 2015, and the two things back to back messed me up so much that I had to start dealing with all of the grief in my life because life pretty much forced me to go on a journey towards emotional and spiritual maturity. And all of this led me to getting sober for good on October 1st, 2017, and eventually beating my alcoholism once and for all, which forced me to change my life completely so that I could continue that journey of self-discovery in order to become the man, the parent, and the human being I wanted to be for my son and for myself. And this is what I've learned because of that journey. If we want to figure out how to, quote unquote, be a man, maybe it's better to just focus on how to be a good human first and foremost. Reading books like The Four Agreements is a great place to start because any man, woman, male, female, he, she, they, or them can benefit from learning to be impeccable with their word, not taking things personally, not making assumptions, and always trying to do their best, even on some days if your best sucks. And if you want to know more about any of those, check out the episode notes for a link to that book because that book can change your life. Another step is to understand our addictions, which represent fear, grief, and pain from the past that is not being dealt with, and not letting those things control our life anymore. A lot of this work has to do with admitting that there's a problem and asking for help. But having said that, I know that can be hard for some because many men have been programmed to believe they should not ask for help, or they can't admit they are wrong, let alone admit they have a problem they don't know how to deal with or figure out, because men have been taught, or maybe they've been brainwashed to believe that admitting all of that or asking for help is a sign of weakness. But no human is weak for asking for help, my friends. No human is weak for having a problem. No male human is any less of a man for saying, I'm hurting and I don't know what to do. You can call old school chauvinistic mentalities whatever you want, but they have taught men to push their feelings down, to not ask for help, and to act like everything is okay. But that is the type of mentality that is feeding the fire of suicide in men, which is increasing at alarming rates. And what all of this has to do with more than anything, which I believe is the true sign of a real quote-unquote man, is emotional maturity and awareness. That is the sign of a real human, because there is more strength and courage in understanding and facing our pain, our fear, our grief, our trauma, so on and so forth, and being able to do something about all of it so that we can heal, and in turn, we can teach others to do the same, as well as the future generations. And with that emotional maturity and awareness comes the ability to defeat the true antagonist in all of our lives, the ego. Yes, my friends, I have circled back to where we started in this conversation because the ego is the root of all evil, and understanding how it holds us back and hobbles us in life is paramount to becoming the best versions of ourselves. And for any men out there who might have some feathers ruffled by this episode and conversation, it's okay. The anger you are feeling is just your ego wanting to hold you back. It doesn't like being threatened. It doesn't want you to evolve and step into your true power that is one of emotional awareness, maturity, and vulnerability. There's more power in knowing how to do the right thing even when it's hard and it benefits you in no way, compared to doing what you want because you can't put your ego to the side. There is more power in remaining silent in the face of conflict or disagreement because you have the emotional maturity to know you have nothing to prove and you don't have to have the last word, compared to posturing, bluffing, or lying because you're afraid to be seen as weak. There is more power in admitting you are broken, sad, or depressed so that the help you need finds you, compared to quote unquote manning up and denying pain exists in your heart and soul. And that's all I have to say on the topic today, my friends. It is the narrative for the day, and I am sticking with it. Much love and much life until the next episode. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and I really appreciate you supporting my podcast and listening to The Human Narrative. I can't wait to bring you more valuable episodes, and I'll talk to you very, very soon. Bye.
You've been listening to another episode from the Human Narrative Podcast. Don't forget to like and share, and we hope you consider subscribing.